Hey guys, if you're taking the SAT soon and you're wondering how do you crack a 700 on the SAT, I've got 2 quick tips to keep in mind in terms of how you approach the exam so that you can crack that 700 bar. If you want to really elevate your game, I've got a crash course for the SAT we're running probably today, if this is being released today, or the week of the June SAT as well in 2022. And we're gonna be doing more live class offerings. SupertutorTV.com/crash course is where we have information on our crash courses. You can also just check out SupertutorTV.com for more stuff that we might have available, and subscribe to our channel if you haven't yet, because we have lots more SAT tips. Cool. Okay. Now, I know that the writing and language section is probably the easier section for most people to improve on than the reading section. And I've got other videos for that, so go watch them. We're going to talk about reading section today because these are the 2 things that I think are going to help you guys elevate the most. My first tip is that I encourage you guys not just to fast think, but also to slow think. One of the things that happens to a lot of my students who are scoring in the 600s, maybe you're in the low 600s, mid 600s, whatever it is, you basically, you have a decent sense of reading. You're like an okay reader, but oftentimes you go through the answers and you get it down to 2, right? And then you're like, oh gosh, both of them kind of sound right and both of them kind of sound wrong, and I don't know what the answer is, right? And then you just kind of, wiggle, wobble, and pick one, right? And guess. I'm going to show you how that could get you in trouble. Okay, so let's look at this passage right now. This is from my online course. So I have a full course for the SAT that you can find at SupertutorTV.com. So if you like what you see here, definitely go and check that out. Number 3, the passage suggests that Korsunsky views Kitty as, and I know I've used this in some of my videos, so maybe you guys have seen it before. And I can kind of go back with you guys right here and sort of look at this. She had scarcely entered the ballroom and reached the throng when she had reached the throng of ladies, all tulle, ribbons, lace, and flowers, waiting to be asked to dance. Kitty was never one of that throng. When she was asked for a waltz and asked by the best partner, the first star in the hierarchy of the ballroom, a renowned director of dances, a married man, handsome and well-built, Yegorushka Korsunsky. "It's a rest to waltz with you," he said to her as they fell into the first slow steps of the waltz. "It's exquisite, such lightness, precision." He said to her the same thing he said to almost all his partners, who we knew well. And then we go on, right? And he's this like married man, this handsome guy. He's the first star in the hierarchy of the ballroom. So you see how after I've read that, kind of my fast impression of this is that he like compliments her, right? And so one of the mistakes that my students make that are maybe scoring in the 600s, they're not quite in the 700s, is they might go through this and they say the passage suggests that Korsunsky views Kitty as, and we have one of many romantic interests, more exceptional a dancer than most, similar to others in a social circle, particularly observant of her surroundings. And the word dancer might pop out at you. You might go, oh yeah, they're dancing, right? If you're in the 600s, you're probably smart enough to understand that this isn't romance. He's this married guy and he asks her to dance, but that doesn't mean he's in love with her. And he also is saying the same thing to her that he says to lots of people. So like most of my students that are in the 600s aren't picking this one, right? Maybe you were, but that's okay. So we get kind of down to these, and then maybe you start going through this, right? And one of a couple things can happen. Either A, you're fast thinking this and you think, oh, he complimented her, and I have that in the quotes, right? It's precision, such lightness. And you're like, oh yeah, like he thought she was a really good dancer, right? And you're like, oh yeah, dance. That like sort of rings a bell in your head. And you see this, it's a rest to waltz with you. It's exquisite, such lightness, precision. And you know that he likes her, and so that kind of vibes out with this idea that she's a good dancer, and he asked her to dance, right? We had that other part earlier. So, maybe she's more exceptional. And that's what you get when you fast think, okay? And what I want you to encourage you to do, if you want to move from that 600 level score to that 700 level score, and you want to start missing maybe 5 in the reading instead of 10 or 14 in the reading, right? It's going to take you understanding that you cannot just fast think these. You cannot move that quickly and expect to get questions like this right. I mean, you can still move quickly, but you've got to be more precise and you've got to really get into it, right? I want to point something out here, which is this comparison here, this more. And comparisons are very dangerous on the SAT. You've got to be really careful in the SAT about precision words, right? Cause and effect, comparisons, things like this. And you've got to slow down and start to slow think it. And what does it mean if you're more exceptional? That means compared to the other dancers. Well, if I go back and I really look at it and I get more precise and I slow think, I'm going to see that this is not a comparison. And then it says he said this to a lot of people. So he's calling a lot of people fabulous. He said this to almost all his partners, right? If I have a comparison, it's that she's just as good as everyone else, not that she's more exceptional than most, that she's just as exceptional as all the other ones that he dances with all the time, right? But again, I don't have a precise comparison. And that's where this gets dangerous, because if you fast think it, you might think, oh, that vibe's out. That sounds kind of right. We're good, right? And what I actually want you guys to be able to do is understand that C, though it doesn't ring any bells because it doesn't have the word dancer, if I think about it, if I slow think it, similar to others in his social circle. Remember, we read this idea that he said the same thing to her that he said to most other people he knew well. Well, who are the people he knows well? Well, he's like the master of the dance, and in the hierarchy of dances, he's like Mr. A number one, right? So his social circle is probably all the cool cats at the dance floor, right? And she's similar to others because he says the same thing to her that he says to everyone else. So it suggests that he views her as similar to the other people because he says the same thing to her, right? But you get what I'm saying is that when you go through this, you cannot just be fast think, fast think, fast think. There are two gears to thinking through the SAT. Your fast think is going to help you get rid of things like romantic interests. That is so way off in left field. And you can't be fooled by these kind of cherry pick things. And I know this is in my other big SAT reading video that has lots and lots of views that some of you might have watched, where I talk about cherry picking. The dancer is that cherry pick. Oh yeah, they're dancers. This is dancing. That rings a bell in your head of saying on topic, on topic, on topic. I do not just want you to pick answer choices that are on topic. I want you to pick answer choices that are precise. And to be precise, you have to slow think. Okay? And so that's how you be precise. My second tip for you guys is that you got to know how to read and paraphrase. I've got a question here. And we're going to talk about this idea of literal comprehension, that this is one of the things that you guys have to get good at. And so what that means is if you have history passages that you have trouble with, you need to be reading history passages and then writing out maybe in paragraph form next to that history passage what each thing means and interpreting it and understanding it. You've got to get really good at comprehension, because if you're not good at it, questions like this are going to get used. This is a history passage also from our online course, which you can find at SupertutorTV.com. Based on passage 2, Chang would be most likely to agree with which claim about the controversy over Chinese immigration. We have further legislative action could help ameliorate local conflicts. It can be ended only if the Chinese are fully educated in America. It is fueled by persons living outside the United States, and it is best solved by increasing the number of Chinese immigrants. So let's give you guys some context. It's about the Chinese Exclusion Act. They're having this debate. There's two passages. The second passage is this Chinese American immigrant who's defending Chinese immigration against the idea of an act that would prevent the Chinese from coming in. And there's this paragraph here that a lot of people misinterpret. So this is what I'm going to read right now with you guys. And then I'm going to show you guys an answer choice that a lot of people fall for because they don't understand this. I don't know who are opposed to the Chinese, whether they are Americans or foreigners, but I think they are as much foreigners as the Chinese themselves. I think so because I have traveled in America, north, south, east, and west, and have never found Native Americans as much opposed to Chinese as foreigners are. So let's just talk about what this means, right? Who is this guy? This guy's a Chinese immigrant. And what is he saying here? I don't know who are opposed to the Chinese, whether they're Americans or foreigners, but I think they are as much foreigners as the Chinese themselves. So basically, these people are coming down on the Chinese who, right, the Chinese who are opposed to the Chinese. So when we say opposed to the Chinese, we're talking about Chinese immigrants, right? We're talking about excluding the Chinese who are moving to this country, not the Chinese in China, the Chinese in this country. So if he says they are as much foreigners as the Chinese, these must also be talking about the Chinese immigrants, right? This is the literal comprehension, the literal paraphrasing that you need to be doing, right? I don't know who are opposed to the Chinese immigrants. Here's my literal translation, right? Whether they're Americans or foreigners, and I'm not quite sure what these mean. This might be a little double entendre. You might be using a play on words, but I think they're as much foreigners as the Chinese themselves. So I don't know whether they're Americans or whether they're immigrants. By foreigners, maybe he means immigrants. But I think they're as foreign as the Chinese themselves. And what he means by that is he says, I've traveled throughout America, right? North, south, east, and west. That means throughout the country of America. And have never found Native Americans. Guess what Native Americans are? They're Native Americans, right? As much opposed to the Chinese as foreigners are. So guess who he's calling foreigners? The Europeans, right? So he's cracking a joke a little bit here, probably, and saying, I don't know who's opposed to them the most, but everywhere I've gone, the Native Americans don't have a problem with this. It's all the European immigrants, you guys. Hypocrites, right? So this kind of literal comprehension is the other piece that can really help you move into the 700 territory. How do you get this? You read a lot of passages. And you can see here that this is not correct. This answer choice that a lot of people end up picking is fueled by persons living outside the United States. No, people who were born outside the United States is what he means by foreigners. So there's tricky situations a lot of times on the exam. You have to be able to understand, read between the lines, and analyze complex texts. If you're not really great at it, Khan Academy is a great place to start. There's plenty of like history passages on Khan Academy, and I'll warn you, some of the questions on Khan Academy aren't that great. But even if it's just understanding history passages, right? Or figuring out what these kind of old school passages mean and how to read them, that's going to be a skill that's going to help you guys. Cool? I hope you guys like this video. If so, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't yet. We have lots more resources at SupertutorTV, and we have a totally free mailing list, supertutortv.com/subscribe, where we'll keep you in the know of new videos that we have every week, and if we've got any deals or offers or anything awesome like that. And remember, we've started doing some live classes with me on supertutortv.com, so definitely check them out. You can check some out at supertutortv.com/crashcourse. Thanks for watching. Take care, you guys.